I've got news for you. Customers do not live in funnels. They don't want to be crammed in your funnel. That's not what their life is like. That's not where they spend their time. They live in communities, they live in ecosystems. So, what does that mean as a marketer? That means you have to live in their communities. You have to live in or build that ecosystem. I'm super excited today to be talking to two people who know exactly how to do that. James Carberry and Jill Rowley are absolute masters at this, understanding that your customers, they're people that they trust, they're products that they trust. You need to either be one of those or partner with one of those. So, James and Jill, I'm super excited to have you here. You can bring them both on stage, Ram, and we're going to kick off PLX Summit Day 3, partner-led marketing, sponsored by Everflow, our gold sponsor of the day. Big shout out to Everflow. James and Jill, I'm going to jump right in. We're bringing it. We're coming in hot. We're not going to do a bunch of setup. James, I'm going to start with you. When people think about going to market, the first thought is usually, how do I get my product in front of my target market? So I want you to tell me what's wrong with that as a starting point.
Yeah, so I think the problem with that is, just like Chet Holmes back in 2007 showed us the buyer's pyramid, and we know that only 10% of our market is ready to buy right now, or even open to buying. And so I think when you lead with this product first mentality, I've got to try to get my product in front of everybody, you're alienating 90% of your market that's not ready to buy right now, but will be one day. And they're not going to have affinity toward you. They're not going to have an irrational bias toward your brand if all you're talking about is the product you sell, and that's not relevant to where they're at right now today. So that's my take on why I think that approach is broken in a 2022 world.
Jill, what's the right approach? Or both of you? Like, what do you do differently if it's not, okay, I got to get information about my product out into the market ASAP? What should you do? It seems like you have to do that, right? What's the alternative?
No, I think just like James said, nobody cares about your product until they understand that they have a problem and that there is a way to actually solve the problem. And what they really care about is who else with the problem has figured it out, right? And so really this is all about initially community, right? In terms of understanding, there's so much more listening to be done than talking when you're launching your company, your product, your service. And I think if you're not spending time understanding your audience, who the people are out there that could actually benefit from what it is you have to offer, and if you're not investing in helping them get aware, understand the challenges, you're not earning their trust, right? You're just another freaking vendor pouncing and pitching rather than listening and understanding and connecting them to valuable resources that they need.
You know what I've started to notice, especially with myself, and I see Miranda Babbitt in the comments said, nobody Googles what new product do I need today randomly, unless they're very bored. I don't think I've ever Googled that before. What I noticed with myself is, and this I think maybe gets taken for granted, the need to be interesting and entertaining in a world of options. So even when I watch sports now, you can watch Monday Night Football. They have this wonderful new feature where you can watch the main broadcast with the sort of boring commentators, or you can watch Peyton and Eli Manning in their basement talking while the game is going on. I want the more entertaining one. And this translates in the world of business. Like, hey, if I want to learn about how to do my job well, I want it to be fun. I want to enjoy the podcast or the article or whatever. I want the entertainment value. So like that is part of creating value for people. It is just like being someone that they're interested in, that they want to be around. So
Yeah.
Let me ask Jill, I'm going to come back to you. What does it mean to live in your community just instead of selling into one? Like, how do you, because it can be easy to sort of come across as phony, like, oh, I got to infiltrate a community to like secretly sell them, right? Because some people might hear that when they hear what we're saying. How do you do that right?
Yeah. Let me just give you an example. So when I was really taking the partner pill, I wanted to know who's who and the partners who, right? And so I wanted to learn from those who were already part of the community, who are actually like doing the hard work in partnership roles. And so for me, it is okay, what are the communities that exist? So partnership leaders is one example. And then what are the podcasts that are talking about partnerships and ecosystems? And so I started to actually like listen and read that content. And then what I would do is I'd connect, right? The person who was being interviewed on the podcast, I would take something that I learned from the podcast, send them a personalized invite to connect on LinkedIn. To be interesting to them, I have to be interested in them, right?
Boom.
And so then I would start to have all of these partnership leaders in my LinkedIn feed. And then I would go and see, okay, who's commenting on their content. And I would just start to really like understand who has the share of voice in the partnership community. And I was listening to the voice of the community and then coming in and commenting on it and just learning right before I come in and say, I know all these things about go to market and the transformation. It was like, really, what's going on? And who are the like media companies that are covering it? Where are the communities that exist? What's the best content that I can consume? Who are the people I can connect with? And then I started being able to connect other people to the partnership community. And that's when it really gets fun, is when I can bring someone into the community, right? And then they can be part of the community. That's where the movement and the momentum really starts to ramp up.
Jill, I gotta give a shout out to you real quick, because you've been in the game so long and you've been doing a lot of this stuff before it was called whatever it's called today, right? These things get new labels, they get a resurgence. And one thing I've seen happen with people who have been around a long time, they often all of a sudden this partnerships thing, ecosystem approach gets its moment in the sun, and they get kind of bitter. And they're like, what are you guys talking? I already know all that. That's all old stuff. And they're kind of like grumpy. And you don't have that. You're like jumping in. You're like, oh, cool. People are talking about what I've been talking about for 20 years. They're using different language. I'm fine with that. Like, I'm not going to be mad and be like, I said it before you. So I commend you. That's not easy to do. James, when you, to make this approach work, do you think it's better to find an existing community and to become a part of it, get yourself involved in it, or to try to build one from scratch? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just give me your take.
Yeah. So, I mean, we say this on B2B growth a lot. We say there are a lot of ways to win. And I think that it's really easy to, I don't know, have a really strong point of view that this is the only way to do it, or SEO is dead, or this is dead, or, partnerships are the only way. And,
or
this is the only way
like, forget the funnel, but
Yeah.
spelled with 4 letters.
I love
kind of
that,
crazy
by the
talk.
way. Yep.
But I think there are lots of ways to win. And I think in this particular case, when I was thinking through this question, I thought, I think you could win doing either. I think I love what Chris Walker did, redefining an existing category that is demand gen. Demand gen was designed a long, I don't know, decades ago. And he came in and owned it and said, this is what's broken about what's currently being done in demand gen. And he's defined for a whole new batch of marketers what modern marketing looks like. But I also think you could create your own community. I mean, I love seeing what Sangram did with Flip My Funnel. And he kind of took the category of ABM that had already existed. The acronyms already existed. Nobody really knows who started. I think probably some people could tell you like, oh, it was so-and-so that started it in 1997, but they're relatively obscure. Like I didn't know who they were, and I'm pretty plugged into the B2B marketing world. But Sangram came in, built Flip My Funnel, the community around it, and was able to storytell around all of the problems that these marketers were having, not just related to what Terminus did at the time, which was account-based advertising. He wasn't just talking about account-based advertising. He was talking about all these different facets of marketing, built a really phenomenal community around it. And then I would say ended up becoming, the category king of ABM, at least for a season. I don't know that I don't see Terminus around as much anymore, but it's but it's interesting to think about it that way. So that's my answer there. I think you can go either way. I know that building a community from scratch, we've tried doing it. outside of the community with B2B growth, we've tried doing it with marketing squads, which were like micro communities. So we would start doing these monthly Zoom calls with 5 to 7 B2B marketing leaders, and it was more intimate. And it was a blast. We did, but it was a lot of work, and it took a lot of focus. And we ended up, I mean, candidly, we ended up flaming out after a year. We just didn't, we lost focus. We wanted to focus on something else, and but I think had we stuck with that, it could have worked. But also, had we gone all in with, getting engaged in like the inbound community or the peak community or pavilion, I think that could have worked too. And really getting engaged in existing communities and evangelizing for, media brands and B2B podcasting, the things that we care about. I think that could have been effective as well.
Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna get involved in existing communities, you got to treat it like a true partnership and think not only how do I connect with the members of that community, but the people who run it, how do I create value for them? So they're not like, oh, you're trying to infiltrate and steal my, my people. By the way, shout out to anybody listening. You mentioned Chris Walker. Give some emoji love down there if you follow Chris Walker and you like his stuff. He's been crushing it on a lot of this. I think it's great for everybody in marketing. There we go. We got some fans. Go ahead, Jill. Go ahead.
Just Chris Walker's attraction is he will punch you in the face. Yeah. Right. And he's not going to just take the slow road, right? He's just going to come in and punch you in the face. And the more you listen to him and watch what he's doing, it's real stuff, right? He's not talking theoretical. He's not doing like the why. I mean, he does some of the why, but he backs it up with the what and the how. And he gives really amazing examples. And he's basically like, he's taking Refine Labs and showing you, behind the curtain, exactly what they're doing. And that is something that I think we want to see. We want to see what happens behind the curtain. So I love, he's got a big personality. And if you're going to actually create or redefine, there has to be a lot of personality involved.
Yeah. Man, what you said about behind the curtain, that's what creates trust.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I see, he's great at that. I see Pete Caputa from Databox. They're always sharing screenshots of, hey, here's what's going on behind. Here's how much engagement at Databox our LinkedIn posts are getting. They're sharing their own marketing data publicly in a way that makes you feel like, hey, I trust this guy, right? They're sharing everything. They're not hiding anything from me. They're not trying to pretend that there's something that they're not. There's something about that transparency. You see some early companies and founders have done that really effectively. James, I don't know if this is too personal. I didn't tell you I was going to bring this up, but I just think it's such a powerful example. I know you have a personal passion for foster care, and you were telling me that you're this is something you really want more people to care about.
Yeah.
And so rather than starting a podcast or a media company around, foster care, like the people that you want to care about it, they don't care about it yet. So they're not Googling foster care. So you were like, well, who are those people? What do they care about? And you started a podcast that was like young married couples or something like that, right? Yeah. And through that, building trust with those audiences, those young married couples that have all kinds of questions, including questions about raising children and adoption and foster care, the ability to say, we're gonna meet them where they are and talk about what they care about. And that gives us the ability now to have this conversation that they didn't know they wanted. They didn't know they were interested in. I think that's such a great example. So I want to know from either of you, where do you see some similar examples in B2B? Do you see somebody who's like going about it indirectly? Okay, nobody knows that they want my product or my solution. So how can I create content and community around something they already want that will naturally bring them to that solution when the time comes?
So when I started that new media brand last year, I was really just running back the same playbook that we ran starting in 2016 with B2B growth. I actually knew nothing about B2B marketing. I thought B2B sales leaders would be the folks that bought our podcasting service, because at the time I saw podcasting primarily as this relationship accelerant, this ability. It gave you an ability to do content collaborations with people and build legitimate friendships and relationships with people that you could ultimately end up doing business with. And so I was thinking, oh, sales leaders are going to love this. And then I did 150 episodes on B2B growth with B2B sales leaders, only to realize that were kept pushing me over to their marketing counterparts as soon as they found out what we do, and being podcast production. And so we named the show in a way that it allowed us to shift the focus to B2B marketing leaders. And as soon as we started doing that is when we started getting traction. But we say this all the time, had we named B2B Growth the B2B podcasting show, it wouldn't. I mean, I think last month it hit #1 in the marketing category in the US. We've had folks like Simon Sinek and Gary Vee and all these folks on the show. We've interviewed.
So you didn't call it Why You Should Have a Podcast.
Yes. Yes.
And by naming, use my company.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think where people, I did a post yesterday on what is a legitimate reason why a B2B company would not build a media brand independent of the product they sell. And the things that I heard were, it's too expensive, which it's not, because I literally did this when we had like 0 employees and it was just me behind a microphone. So it's not too expensive. I think you're telling yourselves a lie that it costs a whole lot more than what it actually does. And then the other piece was that the media company business model is too hard. And I think people are reading too much into it. Like, your product is still how you're monetizing your business. Like, yes, you could offset some of the marketing cost by going and getting some sponsors for one of your events or getting a sponsor for your podcast. But like, you're not necessarily trying to monetize through the media itself. You can, if you wanted to offset some of that marketing expense, but you don't have to. And I just think that nailing the positioning of the media brand to be something that is all encompassing for your buyer instead of just what you do. But then the other piece, the other concern that I saw from comments in that post were, but we still have to sell our product. Like, we're still held accountable to making sure that we sell this thing. And the way we're doing that on B2B Growth, we have one series within B2B Growth. I think we're running 3 or 4 different content franchises inside B2B Growth right now. And one of them is called The Journey, which is, very similar to that behind the curtain, kind of like it's us documenting our journey of trying to build every B2B marketer's favorite media brand in B2B Growth. So we're talking about what we're doing, how we're approaching SEO, how we're doing all these different things to try to build B2B Growth to become this really recognizable and well-known media brand. But that's only one. That's one series in 3 or 4 other series that have nothing to do with what we do or who we are at Sweetfish. And so I think there are ways to integrate what you do and build affinity toward your company without making 100% of your content about your company and about your product. You just have to be creative. And I think you've got to have talent on your team that have that kind of journalistic bent to them.
You gotta love it, right? Because you gotta actually enjoy it too.
Yeah.
And not see it as a chore. Like, we got to do media because everybody else does media.
Yep.
It's got to be in your blood to an extent. I saw a great comment here from Eric. Before you create any content, ask one question: how does this make them a better business, not just a better customer? That's powerful.
Chris
Jill,
Walker
you're chomping at the bit there.
Well, I just think that this is hard because VCs and board members don't get it. And so it's hard to get prioritization to invest in things like media and community, even like partnerships and ecosystem early in the startup journey, because VCs don't get it. Not many of them just are still focused and obsessed with the funnel and the things that can be measured and measured easily that aren't actually creating influence. I think it's like, I think Jared actually said it. Influence is the new inbound. And I just like, whoa, it makes so much freaking sense.
Let's just assume someone else said that. We don't need to give Jarrett more credit. His ego is going to get too big.
He probably heard me say it. And then I was
that's what I think he heard me say it,
so
Jill.
smart.
You influenced him.
Yeah. No, but if you think about it, I mean, this is really the way it's been for human. Like, we are influenced by those that we think have experience, authority, that we trust, that have been down the path before. And so, I think that I always say, like, it's not word of mouth anymore. It's world of mouth, because it's so much bigger now that there's like social networks and social media, that the voice of the creator of the employee, of the little girl in the room is so much bigger, and it has so much bigger like reach than it ever did before. So it makes me excited that we're moving from this corporate, like top down executive power to bottoms up, like really giving the people who have really interesting voices, giving them a platform to really like share that.
Yeah, you're going to go on a podcast with 2 paragraphs that PR, legal, marketing, and 6 other people signed off on, before you. Yeah, I think that the great news is it's starting to change. Some of those VCs are starting to get it, and I think we have some really cool examples, certainly on the B2C side, where you can see, like, look at Barstool Sports, right? It's a media company. Everybody feels like they're hanging out with their buddies. They want to hang out with Barstool. And then what? They roll out a product. Oh, we have our own betting app, or we have our own whatever. You're not going to look for a competitor.
Yeah.
You're going to just go and use it, especially in fields where there's not a lot of differentiation. A betting app is a betting app. If it gets regulatory approval, there's very little differentiation. So what are you going to go with? You're going to go with the one from the guys from Barstool. And I think it's also a great example of how you don't have to. Sometimes you feel like if you're trying to create content and be an authority in a community and provide some value, that you have to be like a deep expert on everything and know what you're talking about. And you don't. The Barstool Sports guys are not smarter than me even about sports most of the time. They're not brilliant analysts, but they're like you, and they're learning out loud, and like people love that. They're exploring just like you are. They're sitting on the couch talking trash about the New York Jets or whatever. That's fun. I do that. I disagree with them, and I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. That's part of what's fun about it. So I think the bar is maybe lower than you think when you can just kind of strip it down and be real. So, okay, we have like five minutes here. I want to ask you, this is where the partnering part comes in, because there's a lot of companies out there that product is in their DNA. That's who they are as a company. That's what they do well. Media is not. So what do you tell those companies? Can they fake it and like pretend to be into media when really they're grumpy about it? Or how do they, I don't know, maybe partner with those who do it well? Thoughts?
Jill and I were talking about this backstage. Actually, we have a very similar point of view. I don't know that. I don't know that necessarily it's a matter of them being like scared to do it as much as it is they don't have the talent to do it. And so whether getting that talent to do it, to create content with you through partnership, it could be through it could be finding, just like going and hiring that talent to be on your full-time team. It could be finding an influencer in your space and getting them to do some sort of content collaboration with you. I like the idea of embedding it actually inside your organization, because here's the brilliant part of what I think HubSpot is doing. And I don't think we're seeing it fully yet with that acquisition of The Hustle. But what they did is they basically are doing a heart transplant on themselves. They've went and acquired this like creator first media company in The Hustle. And now they're embedding that DNA inside of HubSpot. And so shortly after that acquisition, they start their podcast network, and you're starting to see this creator DNA now seep into lots of other things. When they first acquired The Hustle, I listened to the Hustle Daily Show and I was like, okay, I'm still listening to the Hustle Daily Show, and it just feels like HubSpot is like an ad partner. Like, could they have not just like bought an ad spot on that show without necessarily paying whatever it is, $25-30 million to acquire The Hustle? But I think the ninja move in it is, it wasn't just about like the ad inventory that they now own, that they can like promote their own platform on, as much as it was the talent that they embedded into their team is now going to seep through the entire organization. And so I think we're going to start seeing new shows come out of HubSpot in a similar way that we see new content come out of Netflix. Like, because when you have that DNA in you, it flows out of you in a way that is, I think, going to be way more effective for them long term. But just partnering and just like maybe hiring an agency to do it, I don't know is going to be quite as effective as having that talent. I think you can still partner with folks and have that talent in-house, but man, I just think there's something to having it on your team.
Jill, what do you tell those who are scared?
Go look at those who are successful doing it, right? Like,
Ouch.
yeah, I mean,
There's plenty of those stories.
Look at Profitwell, what Patrick Campbell did with Recur and the content that Profitwell created. And it wasn't just like one type of content. They like all different types of content, speaking on different topics, not, pitching Profitwell product, but making like SaaS and subscription and the way that like it just, they're a great example. I would go look at Profitwell. It's early days, but I would follow what Adam, I never pronounce his name right. Schoenfeld. What is it?
Yeah. Schoenfeld.
So I'm a love him. We DM all the time. But what he's building at Peer Signal, it's analyst type data stuff with stories and really interesting like graphics and
they just hired Camille Trent. And which illustrates the point. He went and hired somebody that's already popping off on LinkedIn and knows how to tell incredible stories. And he brought her in house to Peer Signal. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to run Camille's playbook and it's going to work.
Oh my gosh. I feel like this is like our last minute. This could spin off into an entire additional conversation about, hey, how to go ahead and do this. Okay, you believe it. I got to live in community. I gotta be trusted. I got to have a media-like presence. And I'm thinking tactically, one time I sat in a room with a CEO who was hiring a whole bunch of people. He just raised a round and he was in a room full of young employees on the job market. And he did not make a pitch to them about his company to come work for them. He came in and spent 10 minutes saying, hey, here's what I wish I knew when I was your age. Here's what matters in your career. And he gave them this inspiring speech and walked out. Guess what every one of them said when he left? I want to work for his
company.
So think about that. Listen, if you know you need that media capability and that talent, there's a ton of people, even like small YouTubers that may not even have a lot of domain expertise yet, but they're so good at what they do. They would freaking flip out at the chance to make 80, 90, 100 grand and come and run a little podcast and video studio for you. But how do you get them to feel like I want to work for you? You start creating content talking about, hey, here's what the future looks like for creators. Creators can come in and they can run the show. They can have a little studio. They can be like celebrities inside software companies running a media brand. You say the kind of things, you tell them how they can win and how they can make more money than just a couple bucks on YouTube ads. And they might want to, I don't know. I'm just thinking through like there's like, use the strategy to attract the people to come and implement the strategy. There's something there. James,
this isn't
go ahead. You each got 30 seconds. Last 30 seconds.
I want to do something actionable. If you are thinking about how do I become a media company, go check out Audience Plus. What Anthony Canada is doing at Audience Plus. He's really like, it's all about building community and content that helps companies become media-like companies. And, James, you're co-hosting Owned, breaking down Barstool Sports and just like B2C brands that we can learn from. So go check it out. I just think as I've tried to figure this out, I've gone to Audience Plus to get some real education.
James, you have 15 seconds because Jill took some of yours.
I think, to me, if you want to figure this out, you got to start figuring out how to hire creators and how to bring that talent in-house. Creators know psychologically what is going to actually resonate with another human being. And they know the nuances of these platforms where the attention of our buyers currently sit. And so between those two skill sets, I think traditionally those have been not considered powerful skill sets, and they're incredibly powerful skill sets, and you need to pay to have that on your team.
Thank you so much, James and Jill. We are out. See you at the next session, everybody.
Peace. That was great. Thanks.
Bye, y'all.